We join Tommy and Jimmy as Tommy is climbing up a ladder to the roof of his house.
Hey, Tommy, what you doing there, man?
Well, I'm trying to get up here and connect my old cable here with the neighbor's cable, because mine don't work no more.
Why doesn't it work?
Well, I cut the cable, man. I got tired of paying all them high prices, But I got ESPN Plus, and I got the Bally Sports and all that. But none of this is going to help me out with the postseason, man. Yeah, it's just ugly. Huh? So I'm cutting into Uncle Jimmy's cable over here next door.
Hey, you be careful up there, Tommy. It looks like you're going to hit a wire. Look out, look out! Oh, wow, man, you okay? Your hair looks like the Bride of Frankenstein.
Yeah, well, I feel like Yuli Gurriel, though.
Yuli? Well, at least you're going to the playoffs then. Welcome to Baseball Biz. I'm Mark Harper, your host, and man, are we going to have a great show today here on Baseball Biz on Deck. And who's on deck? Well, that was Tommy and Jimmy a moment ago. They're realizing that the cost of trying to keep Bally Sports and ESPN Plus and MLB TV, and they still can't see their show? Something's wrong there. So a little bit of cable cutting going on. Hopefully everybody's safe. We're going to give you some ideas on the best way to watch games during this postseason, because if you do have just one or two of those streaming services, you may not have access if you don't have cable. So we'll talk about that in a moment. But it is Wednesday, October 5th, and a lot of excitement's been going on. Last night, with Aaron Judge, he hit number 62. We'll talk a little bit about that. And the Atlanta Braves and the New York Metropolitans have come together and decided who is going to be the National League East champion. Well, maybe they didn't actually agree on it, but the Braves are there. We'll go into a little bit about that as well. Then overall, we'll give you a breakdown of what's happening across all of MLB to see who's actually made it to the division championships and who's going to be in those wild cards, when they're going to play, where they're going to play, and where it's going to be broadcast. So let's get started. Last night, a third team in the National League reached the century mark of wins. The Dodgers, they've been leading the pack all along in both leagues with 110 historic record the other day of wins. But the Atlanta Braves, they joined that, earlier this week, and they knocked down their 101st win. Last night, the New York Mets slammed down their 100th win. But it just wasn't enough to clinch their division, and I'll tell you why. The Atlanta Braves are finishing up a series in Miami after they swept the Mets earlier this week. And in the Miami series, they lost their first game. The Marlins weren't going to sit down. I mean, they knew at this point there's no way they're going to be in any position with the postseason, but they're a good team and their players have a lot of heart. Jesus Luzardo, the pitcher for the Marlins, he made it very clear that they would just love to be a spoiler on that first game against the Braves in that series. Here's what Mr. Luzardo had to say.
You always have to find a reason to play, and I always internally find reasons, but being a spoiler is kind of an extra little, gives you a little giddy up for sure. I'm glad we were able to, spoil a little bit and put that champagne on ice at least for another day.
And that's what they did Monday. They had the Braves put that champagne on ice because Tuesday things were turning around. And that's when the Braves did defeat the Marlins and getting them up to that magic number of 101 wins, and that changed everything. This secured their spot as the NL East champions. So here we are Wednesday morning, and the Braves are now entering today with a 101-60 win-loss record. That's of 162 games. They've got 161 of them done thus far. So both the Mets and the Braves could potentially end the regular season with a 101-61 record. So how are the Braves able to announce their NL East championship last night? Tiebreakers for division championships is broken down to the win-loss record for games between those teams. So let's see, like I said earlier, the Braves swept the Mets this past week in Atlanta. This gave the Braves a 10-9 win record this season, basically over 19 games with the Mets. Slim margin, but just enough. And that is the record that clinched the NL East Championship for the Braves and left the Mets in second place. Good news for the Mets. As they left the championship with their party goodie bag, they did secure the top position in the National League wild card. That means the Mets will play the wild card series at home against the San Diego Padres, and the Phillies will face the Cardinals in St. Louis. We'll take a break here for our new special sponsor, H2O. It's all about water. Just remember, hydrate, folks. Drink water. It's a wonderful thing for the body. Okay. I'm sorry. I couldn't help myself. I rarely can. Silliness aside, let's go ahead and pause for a moment and looking at what's going on postseason. I want to go ahead and congratulate Aaron Judge for hitting number 62 home run this year. Earlier, he matched up with Roger Maris. Now he's gone beyond that. And a lot of people say, well, he's a home run king. He is. But, of course, people say, well, what about Barry Bonds? What about Mark McGwire? What about Sammy Sosa? Yeah, that was a different time with some different enhancements. And quite honestly, I don't care. If you want to call him king or not call him the king, that's your business. Keep it to yourself. Because what I want to do is honor this young man, Aaron Judge, for what he did, hitting number 62 this year. And I think that's a hell of a thing to celebrate. You want to get down to particulars? Go right ahead. Just don't do it on my shift. Love you. One more thing I'd like to get to before we go back to talking about postseason is a game I watched last night with the Tampa Bay Rays and the Boston Red Sox. It's one of the last two games of the season that both these teams are going to play. And I didn't care who won, but what I did care was that these teams are out there playing and slugging it up out in the water. I mean, it was raining. It was coming down pretty good. They finally called a game after 5 innings, and the Red Sox won with a solid lead of 5-0. So kudos to them. But the thing that bothered me was they should have just called this game off altogether. I was watching Colin Poche out there on the mound, and he's throwing, and after he pitches, I see him kind of twist. He takes his glove hand, his right hand, takes it to his right hip, and he kind of spins a little bit in pain. Then he preps for the next pitch, and nobody really seems to be saying anything. And I can't remember if he threw another one after that or not, but it seemed like it took his catcher, Bethancourt, to acknowledge something was going on out there. The ump missed it, the coach missed it, the doc missed it, but anybody who was watching on TV saw it. And that's playing in that kind of rain. It's just difficult it is difficult for players to play in a healthy environment. A runner going to a base, they could trip and fall, they could slip, they could slide. Anything could happen, running into one another. And some of that happened last night at first base. But, congratulations to the Boston Red Sox for that game. And if that weather's like it there today, I hope they just cancel the game. The Rays have made their way to the postseason, and ain't that enough? So stay safe, players. Let's get back to looking at everything, what is happening with the postseason. And I said I'd give you a breakdown of what games are being played, where, and who will be broadcasting them. You're going to need cable for some of this. That's all I can say. Or you can go ahead and subscribe to Hulu or Sling or one of these other ones who have an agreement, I guess, with ESPN. But how many different subscriptions do you need to watch baseball these days? Sometimes it seems like the best alternative is going to the bar. So let's break it down for you. Here we go. Let's give you a breakdown by league. Starting with the American League, there's going to be we'll go down by seed, okay? So the first 2 seeds start with the Houston being the number 1 seed, and they won, of course, the American League West. And the second seed is the New York Yankees, and they won the American League East. Now, the third division winner was Cleveland, and they won the AL Central. So the first 2 teams, the Yankees and the Astros, they get a bye. However, the third one, Cleveland, they have to go up against wild card teams. So, in the American League, the 3 wild card teams are as follows as seeds. The Blue Jays are number 4. The Seattle Mariners are number 5. Tampa Bay Rays are number 6. And what does that mean as far as how the games are going to be played out in the wild card for the American League? Well, that means Tampa Bay will be facing Cleveland in a series of 3 games, or I should say in the best of. Seattle is going to be heading to Toronto, and the Mariners will face them for 3 games there as well. Now, the winner of that game between the Mariners and the Blue Jays will then go forward and play in the American League Division Series against the Houston Astros. Whereas the winner of the Cleveland-Tampa Bay wild card game will move forward and face the New York Yankees. At that point, the winner of both of those series will then move on, as you can imagine. We'll send you some charts. Well, that gives you a starter there. If we look over to the National League, what we'll see is going down to the seeds. The first seed is the LA Dodgers, not surprisingly, with over 110 wins at this recording. Let's see, the Atlanta Braves are number 2 seed as the National League East champion. And like I said, the Dodgers being the National League West champion. Then we see who's the number 3 seed. Well, that also is a Central team, the National Central team, that is. And the division winner is the St. Louis Cardinals. The Phillies will be facing the Cardinals in St. Louis. And San Diego will be facing the Mets in New York City. After the winner of that San Diego and Mets game, they will go and face the Dodgers. And as far as the Phillies and Cardinals, whoever wins that will be facing the Atlanta Braves, and so on and so on. I'll give you more on the other so-ons later, but that kind of gives you a head start of looking as far as what's going to happen with the wild card, who moves forward to the division series, and then we can get later on into the conference series and the actual World Series on another episode. You've heard me kvetch and complain, argue, and pull my hair about not necessarily being able to watch some games. I mean, I cut the cord, okay? I got rid of cable. I got rid of watching ESPN and everything else on there. What I did do is I streamed with ESPN Plus. I did buy Bally Sports. I did buy MLB.TV subscription. And all of these have restrictions. They have blackouts. I did not buy Apple TV and whatever other else I need to have to, I guess YouTube was for free, but it's just getting to be crazy, people. So where are these going to be appearing on your television set? What do you need to see the wild card and further into the postseason? Let's take a look. First, let me go to MLB.com, and they've got a story in here on wild card series games times announced. And in that article, it says, all series are available in the U.S. on MLB TV with authentication to a participating pay TV provider. Games are not available live internationally. Archives are available approximately 90 minutes after the game ends. So, if you don't mind waiting a day to watch the game, I guess you're okay with MLB TV. But, and you're even better if you already have access with a paid provider, whether it be Spectrum or AT&T or some other little beastie out there. But again, my apologies. So let's break it down. All right, let's go ahead and do that wild card. What's going to be happening this weekend with those teams? Friday, October 7th, an early game starting at 12:07 p.m. That's right, 7 minutes after noon on ESPN. The Rays and the Guardians are going to be playing in Cleveland. And let's see, announcing on that's going to be John Sciambi, Doug Clanville, and Jesse Rogers. The next game up for that day is going to be the Phillies and Cardinals playing there in St. Louis. So game 1 at 2:07 p.m. And guess what? This one's not on ESPN. It's ABC, and it's going to have Michael Kay, Alex Rodriguez, and Alvin Gonzalez. Some people are going to be thinking or listening to a Yankees game on there with Michael Kay and A-Rod, or at least a podcast about the Yankees. Oh, the next game on Friday, October 7th, is the Mariners at the Blue Jays in Game 1. That will be played on ESPN as well at 4:07 p.m. The broadcasters for that will be David Fleming, Jessica Mendoza, Tim Kirkjian, and Coley Harvey. Coley Harvey. Sorry, Coley. Padres and Mets game is the fourth game of the day, and that will be played at 8:07 p.m. in New York. Let's see, who's going to be announcing that or broadcasting with it? It's Carl Ravitch, David Cohn, Eduardo Perez, and Buster Olney. The remainder of the weekend, the games will be played on Saturday, October 8th, the Rays' second game with the Guardians, and that's going to be again at 12:07 p.m. on ESPN2 this time. The Mariners and Blue Jays will be playing their game and that's going to be at 4:07 p.m. on ESPN, all this Saturday, October 8th. And the Padres and Mets will be playing their second game as well at 7:37 p.m. on ESPN. And lastly, on Saturday, the Phillies and Cardinals will play their second game at 8:37 p.m. on ESPN2. Lastly, if there is a third game in these wild cards, if one team hasn't bested the other in two games, here's the schedule for that. The Mariners at the Blue Jays, Game 3 at 2:07 p.m. on ABC. Now, everything I'm going to say after this has parentheses, if necessary, beside it, because we don't know what's going to happen there. Rays and Guardians, Game 3 at 4:07 p.m. on ESPN, if necessary. Padres and Mets, Game 3 at 7:30 p.m. on ESPN. And Phillies and Cardinals, Game 3 at 8:37 p.m. I would watch Sunday closely, because if any teams actually finish it off with a 2-zip on the first couple of games, they may move some of those things around. So basically, you need ESPN, ESPN2, and ABC to watch these games, or some other service, cable and or otherwise, that allows you to have access to that. So there we go with the wild card and what is happening and where to watch. So I hope you have a chance to see all these games. If I may find myself going down to the corner bar to actually engage in conversation with others and enjoy the game and not pay for a cable subscription. So anyway, enough of that. I want to thank you all again for joining me today on Baseball Biz, another abbreviated wildcard edition, and we hope you enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to having some other guests on here real soon, so some excitement will out. And we will be following, of course, this postseason and the results and sharing them with you. So once again, thank you for joining us here on Baseball Biz On Deck. And remember, you can find me, Mark, on Twitter at @TheBaseballBiz, and you can also find this podcast here, and you can find it on Stitcher, you can find Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio. We're everywhere. When you're there, go ahead, leave us a comment, go ahead, love us, subscribe to us, whatever they let you do, and we look forward to talking with you guys again real soon. Special thanks to XTaKeRuX for the music rocking forward.